The day my father died, I was 27 years old and still believed in the idea of family. I stood in the corner of the hospital room, watching the machines flatline, and I felt nothing but a hollow ache. My father, Richard Sterling, had been a titan in the tech world, a man who built a billion-dollar empire from a garage in Palo Alto. To the outside world, he was a genius, a philanthropist, a legend. To me, he was a ghost who showed up for Christmas photos and left before dinner. I was his only child, his daughter. And for 37 years, I had waited for him to see me. He never did. The funeral was a spectacle. Hundreds of people filled the church, all wearing expensive black suits and rehearsed sorrow. I sat in the front row, my mother beside me, her hand clutching mine with a grip that felt more like a warning than comfort. She was a brittle woman, all sharp angles and colder glances, who had spent her life managing Richard's image. She had managed mine too, until I learned to manage myself. The reading of the will was scheduled for the next morning at the family estate, a sprawling mansion in the hills overlooking the city. I drove there alone, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind a blank slate. I had no expectations. My father had left me a trust fund when I turned 21, enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly. I had built my own life, my own career as a financial analyst, far from his shadow. I didn't need his money. I didn't need his approval. But I still wanted to know if he had loved me. Just once. The estate's living room was a museum of his achievements. Glass cases held awards, framed photos of him shaking hands with presidents, a replica of the first circuit board he ever designed. I sat on a leather sofa, my mother across from me, her back straight, her lips pressed into a thin line. The family lawyer, a man named Harrison who had served my father for decades, stood behind a mahogany desk, a folder in his hands. "I'll get straight to it," Harrison said, his voice flat. "Richard Sterling's will is straightforward. The bulk of his estate, including the company, all properties, and liquid assets, is bequeathed to his wife, Eleanor Sterling." My mother didn't flinch. She had known this for years. I nodded, waiting for the part about me. "To his daughter, Claire Sterling," Harrison continued. "He leaves the sum of $100,000. I felt the air leave the room. 100,000. It was a token, a tip for a waitress who had served him well. I had expected nothing, but this felt like a slap. I kept my face neutral, my hands folded in my lap. "And," Harrison added, "a letter." He handed me a sealed envelope. My name was on it, written in my father's familiar, sharp handwriting. I took it, my fingers trembling slightly. My mother watched me, her eyes unreadable. I didn't open it there. I waited until I was in my car, parked in the driveway, the mansion looming behind me like a tomb. I tore the envelope open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The letter was short. It said, "Claire, I know you think I never loved you. You were wrong. But love isn't enough. I had to protect you from the truth. The 100,000 is a decoy. The real inheritance is hidden. Find it. But be careful. Some secrets are worth more than money. Your father." I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. Hidden inheritance. Secrets. Protect me. What was he talking about? I had spent my entire life feeling invisible to him, and now, after his death, he was playing games. I drove home in a daze. My apartment was small, functional, the opposite of the estate. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter in front of me, and I tried to make sense of it. A decoy. That meant the 100,000 was a lie. The real inheritance was something else. But what? And why the secrecy? I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice cool. "Claire, I assume you read the letter." "What does he mean, Mom? What hidden inheritance?" She was silent for a long moment. "Your father was a complicated man, Claire. He made enemies. He kept secrets. Some of those secrets could destroy the family name." "Then tell me." "I can't." "I don't know. He never told me everything, but he said you would find it. He said you were the only one who could." I hung up, my mind racing. My father had never trusted me with anything, and now he was trusting me with this. I felt a strange mix of anger and curiosity. Anger that he had waited until he was dead to give me a puzzle. Curiosity that maybe, just maybe, he had seen me after all. I started digging that night. I went through his old files, the ones he had left in a storage unit he rented under a fake name. I found bank statements, legal documents, and a series of encrypted emails. I used my skills as an analyst to crack the code, spending hours in front of my laptop, my eyes burning. The emails were between my father and a man named Vincent Cross. The name was familiar. Vincent Cross was a tech entrepreneur, a rival of my father's from the early days. He had died in a car accident 15 years ago. But the emails suggested something else. They hinted at a partnership, a project they had worked on together, something called the Atlas Protocol. I found a single line in one of the emails that stopped me cold. If anything happens to me, send the package to Claire. She'll know what to do. My father had planned this. He had left a trail for me to follow. But why? And what was the Atlas Protocol? I spent the next week chasing leads. I visited old colleagues of my father, people who had worked with him in the 90s. They all gave me the same answer, vague smiles, shrugs, and a warning to let it go. "Some things are better left buried, Claire," one of them said. But I couldn't let it go. I was too deep. The more I searched, the more I realized how little I knew about my father. He wasn't just a tech mogul. He was a man with a past, a man who had made deals in shadows. On the 7th night, I found a key. It was hidden in the lining of an old leather jacket he had left in the storage unit. The key was small, silver, with a number engraved on it, 404. It looked like a safety deposit box key. I drove to the bank the next morning. The box was in a private room, accessible only with the key and a code. The code was my birthday. Of course it was. My father had always had a flair for the dramatic. Inside the box was a single USB drive. I took it home, my hands shaking. I plugged it into my laptop and a single file appeared, a video. I clicked play. My father's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, tired, but his eyes were sharp. He was sitting in his study, the same room where he had spent most of my childhood locked away. "Claire," he said, his voice rough, "if you're watching this, I'm gone. And you've already found the key. Good. You're smarter than I gave you credit for." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I hadn't cried at his funeral. I hadn't cried at the will. But hearing his voice, seeing his face, broke something inside me. "I need you to do something," he continued. "Vincent Cross didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. And I know who did it. But I can't tell you. Not yet. You have to find the proof yourself. It's hidden in the company's old server room, the one in the basement. The one I told everyone was sealed off." He paused, his eyes searching the camera. "Be careful, Claire. The people who killed Vincent are still out there, and they'll do anything to keep the truth buried." The video ended. I sat in the dark, my laptop glowing, my heart pounding. My father had been hiding something worth killing for, and now he had handed me the key. But I wasn't just looking for money anymore. I was looking for the truth, and I had a feeling that the truth was going to be more dangerous than any inheritance. The morning light crept through my window, and I knew I couldn't stop. I had to go to the company. I had to find the server room. I had to uncover what my father had died protecting. But as I grabbed my coat, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Claire, or you'll end up like your father." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. Someone was watching. Someone new. And the game had just begun. The morning after my mother's funeral, I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, staring at the wall. The house was quiet now. No more murmuring relatives. No more casseroles with sticky notes taped to the foil. Just the hollow sound of a house that had lost its heart. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the hospital bed, the way she squeezed my hand like she was holding on to the last thread of a rope. "Take care of your sister," she whispered. Those were her final words to me. Not about money, not about the house, just Ellie. Ellie. My younger sister. The one who always needed saving. The one who called me at 2 a.m. when her boyfriend disappeared with her car keys. The one who cried at my wedding because she thought I was leaving her behind. I loved her. I did. But loving Ellie was like holding a handful of sand. The tighter you gripped, the more slipped through your fingers. I walked downstairs, my feet heavy on the creaky wooden steps. The kitchen smelled like old coffee and wilting flowers. Aunt Carol had left a note on the counter. "Call me when you're up. We need to talk about the will." The will. I'd been dreading that word since the lawyer called 2 days before the funeral. "Your mother left specific instructions," he said. "We'll read it after the service." But after the service, no one mentioned it. Everyone was too busy hugging and crying and eating cold ham. I picked up my phone. There were 12 missed calls from Ellie. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I knew what she'd say. She'd want money. She always wanted money. Last year, it was $5,000 for a business opportunity that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. The year before, it was $3,000 for an emergency that was really a new handbag. Mom always gave in. I always said no, but now Mom was gone, and I was the one holding the rope. At 10 a.m., I drove to the lawyer's office. The building was old, brick, with a brass plaque that read, "Harold Finch, Attorney at Law." Inside, the air smelled like paper and dust. Harold was in his 70s with white hair and glasses that sat low on his nose. He shook my hand with a firm grip. "I'm sorry for your loss, Clara. Your mother was a good woman." I nodded. "Thank you." He gestured to a leather chair. "Please sit. Your sister isn't here yet." I sat. My hands were cold. I rubbed them together, trying to warm them. "She's always late." Harold smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've known your family for 30 years. "I know." We waited in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Each second felt like a small hammer hitting my chest. I thought about Mom, the way she laughed when I told her I got the promotion, the way she cried when I moved to Chicago, the way she never complained, even when the chemo made her sick. The door swung open. Ellie burst in, her eyes red and swollen. She was wearing a black dress that was too tight, her hair messy like she'd just rolled out of bed. Sorry, I couldn't find parking." I stood up. "It's fine." She hugged me and I felt her body shake. "I miss her so much." "I know." I patted her back. "I know." Harold cleared his throat. "Let's begin." We sat across from his desk. He pulled out a manila folder thick with papers. My stomach tightened. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a small savings account. Maybe some jewelry. Mom wasn't rich. She was a retired school teacher who lived in a house with a leaky roof and a garden full of weeds. "Your mother's will is straightforward," Harold said. "She left the house to both of you, equally." Ellie smiled. "Okay, that's good. There's also a life insurance policy, $200,000. My breath caught. 200,000. That was more than I'd ever imagined. I didn't know she had that. "She took it out 5 years ago," Harold said. "She was very careful about it." Ellie leaned forward. "So we split it? 50-50? Harold paused. He adjusted his glasses. "No, the policy is payable to Clara alone." The room went still. I felt Ellie's eyes on me, burning. "What?" she said. "That doesn't make sense." "Your mother specified that Clara is the sole beneficiary," Harold said. "She wrote a letter explaining her decision." Ellie's voice cracked. "A letter? Well, let me see it." Harold handed her a sealed envelope. Ellie tore it open, her hands shaking. She read it silently, her face going pale. Then she looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. "She says I'm irresponsible," Ellie whispered. "She says you'll know what to do with the money." I reached for her hand. "Ellie, She pulled away. "No, don't touch me." I didn't know about this. "You're the favorite. You always were." Her voice was sharp like broken glass. "Mom gave you everything, the money, the trust, and I get nothing, just a house I can't afford to keep." Harold intervened. "The house is half yours. You can sell it." "Sell it?" Ellie laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Sell our childhood home? The only thing she left me?" She stood up, knocking her chair back. "I can't believe this. "Ellie, please, let's talk about this." But she was already at the door. She turned, her eyes wet. "You don't get it, Clara. You never did. Mom didn't trust me, and now you have all the power." She pointed a finger at me. "This isn't over." The door slammed. I sat there, staring at the empty space where she'd been. My heart was pounding. My hands were cold again. Harold handed me a copy of the will. "I'm sorry, Clara. Family is complicated." I took the papers, but I didn't look at them. I was thinking about Ellie's face, the hurt, the accusation. The way she said, "You have all the power," like it was a curse. On the drive home, I called her. No answer. I texted, "Let's talk. I don't want this to come between us." No reply. I sat in the driveway, staring at the house. The garden was overgrown. The paint was peeling. It was just a building now, a shell. Without Mom, it felt empty. My phone buzzed. A text from Ellie. "I'm going to fight this." I typed back. "Fight what?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. I walked inside and went to Mom's room. I hadn't touched anything since she died. Her clothes were still in the closet, her books on the nightstand, a half-empty glass of water on the table. I sat on her bed and held her pillow. It still smelled like her, lavender and old paper. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix this. All I knew was that my mother's last gift had just become a weapon, and my sister was holding the trigger. The next morning, I found a letter slipped under the front door. No stamp, no return address, just my name, written in Ellie's messy handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a single sentence. "You think you know everything, but you don't." I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking. What did she mean? What didn't I know? I looked out the window. The street was empty. The sun was rising. But I felt cold. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. My mother's will wasn't just a surprise. It was a puzzle. And Ellie had just told me I was missing the most important piece. The weight in my chest refused to lift. 3 days had passed since I walked out of that diner, since my mother told me I wasn't her daughter. I sat in my cramped apartment staring at the ceiling, the words still burning. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, cold and distant, like I was a stranger who had wandered into her life by mistake. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister, Linda. "Mom said you left early. Everything okay?" I didn't know how to answer. Okay was a word that no longer applied to me. I typed back, "Can we talk? Alone?" She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near her work the next afternoon. I arrived early, my hands shaking around a cup of black coffee I didn't drink. The place smelled of burnt espresso and stale pastries. I watched the door, rehearsing what I would say. How do you tell your sister that your mother might not be your mother? How do you say that without sounding insane? Linda walked in, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her work badge still clipped to her blazer. She looked tired but composed, always the responsible one. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes scanning my face. "You look terrible," she said, not unkindly. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath. I decided to start at the beginning. Not the fight, not the accusation, the document. I pulled out my phone and showed her the birth certificate, the one with my name, my birth date, but a different mother's name, Elena Vasquez. Linda stared at the screen. Her face went pale, then red. She pushed the phone back toward me like it was on fire. "Where did you get this?" Her voice was sharp, defensive. "From the county clerk's office," I said. "I had to order it for a background check. Linda, who is Elena Vasquez?" She looked away, out the window at the traffic crawling by. Her jaw tightened. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not confusion, recognition. "You know something," I whispered. "You know, don't you?" She was quiet for a long time. The coffee shop noise faded. I could hear my own heartbeat. "Mom and Dad adopted you," she said finally. Her voice was barely audible. "When you were 6 months old, it was a private adoption. They never wanted you to know." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Adopted. The word felt foreign, like a language I didn't speak. I had always looked different from the rest of the family. Darker hair, darker eyes. I had joked about being the mailman's child, but this was real. "Why didn't they tell me?" My voice cracked. "Mom said it was better this way, that you were hers, and that's all that mattered." Linda's eyes were wet now. "I was 6 when you came. I remember. A woman brought you to the house. She was crying. Mom took you from her arms and never looked back." "A woman," I repeated. "Elena?" Linda nodded. "I think so. I never saw her again. Mom told me never to speak of it. She said if I ever told you, she would send me away." I felt sick. My mother had threatened my sister to keep this secret. For 29 years, I had been living a lie. Every birthday, every family photo, every hug from my father, all built on a foundation of silence. "Did Dad know?" I asked. "Dad knew everything," Linda said. "He went along with it. He loved you, Sarah. He really did. But he was scared of Mom. We all were." I thought of my father, the quiet man who taught me how to fix a bike, who never missed a school play, who died 3 years ago with a smile on his face. I had loved him so much. Now I wondered if he ever looked at me and saw a stranger. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Elena." Linda shook her head. "I don't know. I was a kid. I don't even remember her full name. But I remember she was young, and she was heartbroken." Heartbroken. That word stuck to me like glue. My birth mother had given me away, and my adoptive mother had erased her from existence. And now, when I tried to ask questions, I was met with ice and denial. "What did Mom say when you confronted her?" Linda asked. "She said I wasn't her daughter," I said. "She said I was never her daughter." Linda's face crumpled. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you years ago. I was a coward." I squeezed her hand. "No, you were a child. She made you keep a secret you couldn't understand." We sat there for a while, not speaking. The weight in my chest shifted. It didn't disappear, but it moved. Now I had a name, Elena Vasquez. I had a new direction. I asked Linda if she remembered anything else, any detail, any name, any place. She closed her eyes, digging through the archives of a 6-year-old's memory. "She had dark hair, like yours," Linda said. "She wore a yellow dress, and she kept saying, 'Take care of her. Please take care of her.'" Mom just nodded and closed the door. Yellow dress, dark hair, a woman begging for her baby to be loved. And my mother, the woman I called Mom, took me without a word of comfort, without a goodbye. I thanked Linda. I hugged her longer than I had hugged anyone in years. Then I walked out of the coffee shop into the cold afternoon air. I had a name. I had a lead. But I had no idea where to start. Elena Vasquez could be anywhere. She could be dead. She could have a new family. She could have spent the last 3 decades wondering what happened to the baby she gave away. I pulled out my phone and opened a search engine. I typed in the name. Hundreds of results. None of them meant anything. I needed more. I needed a city, a date, a document. I called the county clerk's office again. This time, I asked for the full adoption file. The woman on the phone told me sealed records required a court order. I asked how to get one. She gave me a list of steps that felt impossible, but I didn't care. I had already lost my mother once. I wasn't going to lose the truth again. That night, I sat in my dark apartment, the birth certificate spread out on the coffee table. I stared at Elena's name until my eyes burned. Somewhere out there, a woman in a yellow dress had held me once. She had cried over me. She had let me go. And somewhere out there, a woman I called Mom was pretending I never existed. I wasn't sure which was more painful, but I was sure of one thing. I was going to find Elena Vasquez, no matter what it cost me. The morning after the dinner, I woke up with a hollow feeling in my chest. The anniversary party was in 3 days. 3 days until I had to stand in front of everyone and pretend our marriage was a fairy tale. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. The divorce papers were still unsigned. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right moment. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was waiting for proof. Something solid. Something I could hold up to the light and say, "See? This is who he really is." I got dressed slowly. Richard had already left for work, which was normal. He never said goodbye anymore. I walked into the kitchen and saw a note on the counter. Don't forget the florist today. Final payment due. R. Just business. Always business. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I think you should see this. Meet me at the Blue Moon Diner on 4th, 11 a.m. Come alone. I stared at the screen. My heart started pounding. Who was this? A friend? A stranger? A trap? I almost deleted it. But then I thought about the envelope, the one I found in Richard's jacket, the one with the address I didn't recognize. I needed answers. And I was tired of waiting. I grabbed my keys and drove to the diner. The place was old and quiet, with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't played in years. I ordered coffee and waited. At exactly 11, the door opened and a woman walked in. She was in her late 40s with tired eyes and a worn-out coat. She looked nervous. She spotted me and walked over. "You're Emily?" she asked. "Yes. Who are you?" She sat down across from me. "My name is Diane. I'm Richard's sister." I almost dropped my coffee. Richard doesn't have a sister. He's an only child. She let out a bitter laugh. That's what he tells everyone, but I'm his older sister. Same mother, different father. Our mother put me up for adoption when she married Richard's father. She never told him about me. I found him 3 years ago. He was not happy to see me. I felt the world tilt. Why are you telling me this? Diane reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila folder. She slid it across the table. Because I know what he's doing to you, and I know what he's planning. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, property deeds, and notarized documents. I didn't understand everything at first, but then I saw my name, Emily Carter, listed as a co-signer on a loan for a business I had never heard of, a loan for $300,000. "What is this?" I whispered. "Richard has been taking out loans in your name for the past 2 years, Diane said quietly. He's been using your credit, your social security number, your signature. He forged everything. The money went into an offshore account. He's been siphoning funds from his own company, too. He's planning to disappear. He's been planning it for a long time." I couldn't breathe. "Why are you helping me? You're his sister." "He threatened me when I first reached out. Told me if I ever spoke to you or anyone in his life, he'd ruin me. I have a daughter, a granddaughter. I couldn't risk it. But when I heard about the anniversary party, I knew I had to act. He's going to announce something big there, isn't he?" I nodded slowly. "He's planning to announce a new charity foundation, in my name." Diane shook her head. "That's not a charity. That's a shell. He's going to funnel the last of the money through it and then disappear. You'll be left with the debt, the legal trouble, the shame." I felt tears burning in my eyes. Why does he hate me so much? "He doesn't hate you," Diane said softly. "He doesn't love you either. He just uses people. I was his first victim. You were his second. But you don't have to be his last." I looked at the documents again. The evidence was overwhelming. Dates, signatures, bank transfers. It was all there. I had the proof I had been searching for. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the years I had given him, the trust, the love, the life I had built on a lie. "What do I do?" I asked. Diane leaned forward. "You have 3 days until the party. He's going to make his move then. But you can make yours first. You have the evidence. You have the truth. The question is, are you ready to use it?" I thought about the dinner party, the smiling faces, the champagne, the speeches. I thought about Richard standing at the podium, looking like the perfect husband while I sat in the audience, holding a folder full of his crimes. "I'm ready," I said. Diane reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Good, because once you start this, there's no going back. He will fight. He will lie. He will try to destroy you, but you have something he doesn't have." "What?" "You have the truth, and you have me." I left the diner with the folder tucked under my arm. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. But for the first time in years, I felt something other than fear. I felt purpose. I drove home and locked the folder in my safe. Then I called my lawyer. I told her I needed to move forward with the divorce. I told her I had evidence of fraud. She was quiet for a moment. "Emily, this changes everything," she said. "If you have proof of forgery and financial crimes, we can go after him for everything. But you need to be careful. He's dangerous." "I know," I said, "but I'm not afraid anymore." I hung up and looked at the calendar. 3 days. 3 days until the anniversary party. 3 days until I would stand in front of everyone and tell them the truth. But I still had one question. The address on the envelope. The one I found in Richard's jacket. I opened my laptop and typed it into a search engine. It was a storage unit on the outskirts of town. I grabbed my keys and drove there without thinking. The place was run down with rusted gates and flickering lights. I found the unit number and stared at the padlock. I didn't have a key, but I had a crowbar in my trunk. I stood there for a long moment, the metal cold in my hands. If I broke that lock, there was no going back. But I had already crossed that line the moment I met Diane. I swung the crowbar, the lock snapped. I pulled the door open and stepped inside. The unit was filled with boxes, dozens of them. I opened the first one and felt my stomach drop. It was full of cash, bundles of $100 bills. I opened another, more cash, another, jewelry, watches, diamonds, and in the back, a suitcase. I unzipped it and found passports, multiple passports with different names, Richard's face on every one. He was ready to run. He'd been ready for years. I closed the suitcase and took a deep breath. The air smelled like dust and betrayal. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything, every box, every stack of cash, every fake passport. Then I closed the unit and walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at the storage unit. I thought about the life I had lived, the dinners, the parties, the fake smiles, and I thought about what was coming. The anniversary party was in 3 days, and I was going to burn it all down. The sterile smell of the hotel room clung to my clothes. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the burner phone in my hands. Across from me, Marcus paced like a caged animal. The evidence was spread across the nightstand. Screenshots, bank statements, the fake charity documentation. It all felt like a bomb waiting to explode. "We have enough," Marcus said, stopping. "We can go to the police tomorrow." I shook my head. "Not yet. We need the moment to be perfect, public, unforgettable." He frowned. "What are you planning?" "The family dinner," I said. "Mom's birthday. 2 weeks from now. Everyone will be there. Uncle Richard, Aunt Linda, the cousins, the family friends. It's the only place where they can't run." Marcus sat down next to me. "You're going to confront them in front of everyone?" "I'm going to expose them," I said. "Every single lie, every dollar they stole, every time they made me feel like I was the crazy one." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That's going to destroy the family." "The family was already destroyed," I whispered. "I'm just revealing the truth." Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost. I attended work, went through the motions, but my mind was consumed by the plan. I rehearsed the words I would say. I memorized the timeline of their betrayal. I studied the evidence until I could recite it in my sleep. I also watched them, from a distance, through social media, through the little snippets my sister Sarah would send me. They were planning Mom's birthday party. They were laughing. They were acting as if nothing had happened. Uncle Richard posted a photo of himself at a charity gala. The caption read, "Proud to support our community's youth." I zoomed in on the backdrop. It was the same logo from the fake charity. My stomach turned. Aunt Linda shared a picture of her new car, a Lexus, brand new. She captioned it, "Treat yourself. You deserve it." I calculated the cost, $30,000. My inheritance, my parents' savings. The rage grew inside me like a living thing, but I kept it contained. I smiled when I saw them at the grocery store. I waved when I drove past their houses. I played the role of the forgiving niece, the one who had moved on. 2 days before the dinner, I received a text from my mother. "Can't wait to see you at my party. It's been too long. Love you." I stared at the screen. Love. Such a simple word. but it felt like a knife. She loved me, but she had chosen them. She had let them take everything. I didn't respond. The morning of the dinner, I woke up early. I laid out my clothes on the bed. A simple black dress, professional, serious. I wanted to look like I was delivering a verdict, not asking for forgiveness. Marcus called. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "I'll be there," he said, "in the back, if you need me." "I won't need you," I said, "but thank you." I drove to my mother's house. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. Cars lined the driveway. I could hear music and laughter from inside. It sounded like a celebration. I walked up the steps. My hand hovered over the doorbell. For a moment, I hesitated. I thought about my father, about the life we could have had, about the dreams they had stolen. Then I pressed the button. The door swung open. My mother stood there, beaming. She was wearing a pink blouse and a string of pearls. She looked happy. "There you are," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I was worried you wouldn't come." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. My voice was steady. She led me inside. The house was filled with people. I saw Uncle Richard by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Aunt Linda was in the kitchen, arranging a platter of appetizers. My cousins were laughing in the corner. Everyone looked at me. Smiles. Greetings. "So good to see you. You look great." "We missed you." I smiled back. I played the game. Dinner was served. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The same meal my father used to make. I pushed the food around my plate. I couldn't eat. My mother stood up. She tapped her glass with a fork. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "This means so much to me." Everyone cheered. She continued, "And I want to thank my brother Richard and his wife Linda for organizing everything. They've been so supportive these past few years." Uncle Richard raised his glass. "Anything for family," he said. I felt the words rise in my throat. I swallowed them down. Then my mother looked at me. "And I'm so glad my daughter is here. We've had our differences, but family is everything." She smiled at me. I smiled back, but inside, I was counting down the seconds. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room. Coffee was served. Cake was cut. The conversation was light, easy. I waited. Then Uncle Richard stood up. "I have a small announcement," he said. "Linda and I have decided to donate $10,000 to a local children's charity in Mom's name." Applause erupted. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I stood up. The room went quiet. "That's very generous," I said, "but I have an announcement too." Everyone looked at me. My mother's smile faltered. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the folder, the one with all the evidence. "Uncle Richard," I said, my voice clear, "do you remember the trust fund my parents set up for me?" He blinked. "What are you talking about?" "The one you drained," I said. "The one you and Aunt Linda stole from. The one you used to buy a new car and fund your fake charity." The room froze. Aunt Linda's face went white. "That's not true." I opened the folder. I held up the first page. "This is a bank statement from the trust fund. It shows a withdrawal of $50,000 signed by you 3 months after my father died." I turned to the next page. "This is a receipt for a Lexus, purchased the same week." I held up another document. "And this is the registration for a charity that doesn't exist, a charity you used to launder money." My mother was standing now. Her hands were shaking. "What is this?" "This is the truth," I said. "They stole from me. They stole from you, and they've been lying about it for years." Uncle Richard stepped forward. His face was red. "You have no proof." "I have all the proof," I said, "and I have a lawyer." The room erupted. Voices shouted. My mother was crying. Aunt Linda was screaming. My cousins were staring, frozen. I stood in the middle of it all, holding the folder. I felt nothing. Then I looked at my mother. She was looking at me. Not at them. Her eyes were wide. Her mouth was open. I waited for her to say something. She didn't. I turned and walked out the door. The night air hit my face. I walked to my car. My hands were shaking now. I dropped the folder on the passenger seat. I sat there for a long time, staring through the windshield at the house. The lights were still on. The shouting had faded. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "You did it." I didn't respond. I started the engine. I drove away. But I knew this wasn't over. They would fight back. They would deny everything. They would try to turn everyone against me. And somewhere in that house, my mother was still holding her pearls, not knowing whose side to take. The morning after the confrontation felt like walking through molasses. I sat at my kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee untouched in front of me, staring at the wall. The adrenaline had drained away, leaving behind a hollow ache in my chest. I had confronted my family. Yes, I had thrown their betrayal in their faces, but the victory felt empty. They had scattered like roaches, retreating into their separate corners of the house, avoiding me. The silence was worse than the fighting. I kept replaying the moment in the study. The look on my father's face when I mentioned the frozen accounts, the way my mother's hand had tightened on her pearls, the way my sister, Sarah, had refused to meet my eyes. They knew. They all knew. But knowing and admitting were two different things. They were waiting for me to back down, to apologize for my tone, to pretend everything was fine. That was the family script. Always had been. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. It was a single line. "Check your email. Use the password you used for the old family safe." My heart stopped. The old family safe. The one in the basement that hadn't been opened since I was a teenager. The combination was a joke we all knew. Our mother's birthday, reversed. I had used it as a password for a dozen things over the years. I opened my laptop, my fingers trembling. There was an email from a sender I didn't recognize. Family, Accountant, and Legal Services. The subject line was blank. I typed in the password. The email opened, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. It was a document. A detailed financial statement from a shell company called Alderwood Holdings. And attached to it was a list of transactions, payments, large ones, made to my father, my mother, my sister, and my brother-in-law. Over the past 4 years, the amounts were staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it was the source that made my blood run cold. The payments were all from an account that had my name on it, an account I had never opened. I scrolled down. There was a note at the bottom, written in a formal legal tone. "To whom it may concern, this document is a record of unauthorized withdrawals from the trust fund established for Clara Bennett by her grandmother, Eleanor Vance. The trust was established in 2004 and was intended to be held until Clara's 35th birthday. Records indicate that the trust was liquidated in its entirety in 2021, with funds diverted to the above-listed accounts. All signatures on the liquidation documents appear to be forgeries." I couldn't breathe. My grandmother's trust. The one she had set up when I was 10 years old. She had told me about it on her deathbed, her voice a whisper. "It's your safety net, Clara. Don't let anyone touch it until you're ready." I had always thought it was a small thing, a few $1,000s maybe, but the numbers on the screen were not small. The trust had been worth nearly $2 million. $2 million, and my family had stolen every cent. I closed the laptop and stood up, my legs shaking. I walked into the living room. My mother was there, reading a magazine, pretending I didn't exist. My father was in his armchair watching the news. I stood in the doorway and held up my phone. "I have a document," I said. My voice was steady, but it felt like it was coming from someone else. "From a shell company called Alderwood Holdings. It shows that you all have been receiving payments from a trust fund that belonged to me. A trust fund set up by Grandma Eleanor." My mother's magazine slid from her hands. My father's face went pale. He didn't say anything. He just stared at me. "You drained it," I continued. "Every cent, almost $2 million, and you used a forged signature to do it." My mother stood up, her face twisted. "That's a lie. You have no proof." "I have the document," I said. "I have the transaction records. I have the names of the accounts you used, and I have the name of the lawyer who processed the liquidation. I'm going to call him. Today." My father finally spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Clara, you don't understand. We needed that money. The business was failing. Your mother had medical bills. We were going to pay you back." "Pay me back?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You stole from me. You forged my name. You lied to me for years. And you expect me to believe you were going to pay me back?" My sister appeared in the hallway, her face hard. "You don't know what you're talking about, Clara. You've always been so dramatic. It was a family emergency. We did what we had to do." "A family emergency?" I repeated. "You bought a new car. You went on vacations. You renovated the kitchen. That wasn't an emergency. That was theft." My mother started crying, but it felt staged, like a performance. "We're your family. How can you do this to us?" I looked at her, at all of them, the people I had loved and trusted, the people who had raised me, and I felt something break inside me. Not a crack, but a clean snap. "You're not my family," I said. "You're just people who used me, and I'm done." I turned and walked out the front door. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove to the nearest police station. I had the document on my phone. I had the names. I had the proof. And I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. I was never going to let them hurt me again. The silence in my car was heavier than any sound I'd ever heard. I sat in the driveway of the house I'd grown up in, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Mom's house, the one she'd signed over to Dad in that divorce settlement, the one she'd cried over for years, and now I knew why she'd let it go without a fight. I'd spent the last 3 days in a fog, replaying every conversation, every sideways glance, every time Mom had said, "Your father works so hard," with that hollow tone. I'd been blind. We all had. But now, I saw everything. The front door opened and Dad stepped out, a coffee mug in his hand. He looked old, tired. His hair was grayer than I remembered, his shoulders slumped like he was carrying the weight of 1,000 lies. He spotted my car and froze. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, fear. Then he smiled, that practiced politician smile I'd seen 1,000 times. "Clara," he called out, his voice warm. "Didn't expect you. Come in, I'll make you some tea." I didn't move. I just stared at him through the windshield, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. He waited, his smile faltering. Then I opened the door and stepped out. "I'm not here for tea, Dad." His smile vanished. He set the mug down on the porch railing and crossed his arms. "What's going on? You look upset." "Upset?" I laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. "That's one word for it. I found the documents, Dad. All of them. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the trust fund you set up for yourself while Mom was drowning in debt." His face went pale. Not the kind of pale you get from shock, but the kind that comes from being caught. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Clara, let me explain. It's not what you think." "Really?" I stepped closer, my voice rising. "Because I think you stole from Mom. I think you hid millions while she worked 2 jobs to keep this house. I think you lied to all of us, every single day, for 15 years. He held up his hands, a gesture of surrender that felt rehearsed. "The money was for the family, for you and your sister. I was protecting our future." Our future? I stopped a few feet from him, my hands shaking. Mom's future was a foreclosure notice. She lost everything because of you, and you sat at her funeral crying, pretending to be the grieving ex-husband. His eyes hardened. The mask slipped, and I saw the man underneath, cold, calculating. Your mother made her choices. She refused to take my help. She was proud, stubborn. I couldn't force her to accept anything. "She didn't know what you had," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "None of us did. You hid it so well, Dad. The secret accounts, the fake business losses, the tax shelters. You're a genius at hiding things." He didn't deny it. He just stood there, his jaw tight, his eyes boring into mine. "What do you want, Clara?" "I want the truth, all of it, and I want you to make it right." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Make it right? There's nothing to make right. The past is the past. You can't change it. But I can change the future. I pulled out my phone, the screen lit with a photo of the documents I'd found. I have everything, every account number, every transaction, every lie you told, and I'm giving it to the lawyer tomorrow. His face twisted. You'd destroy your own father? After everything I've done for you? You destroyed yourself, Dad. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are. I turned and walked back to my car, my legs shaking with every step. He called after me, his voice cracking. Clara, wait, please, we can work this out. I'll give you money, whatever you want. I stopped with my hand on the door. I don't want your money. I want justice. I got in the car and drove away, leaving him standing on the porch, his coffee mug cold and forgotten. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I saw his face, I might break, and I couldn't afford to break. Not now. That night, I sat in my apartment, the documents spread across my kitchen table. I had everything. The proof, the evidence, the truth. But I also had a sister who still believed Dad was a saint, a family that would be torn apart, a mother who wasn't here to see it. I picked up my phone and dialed. Hello? Mark, I said, my voice steady. It's Clara. I have everything you need. The accounts, the transfers, the hidden assets. It's all here. There was a pause. Then his voice, calm and professional. Are you sure about this, Clara? Once we file, there's no going back. I looked at the photo of Mom on my wall, her smile wide and genuine, a woman who never knew how badly she'd been betrayed. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I hung up and stared at the phone. Tomorrow, I'd hand it all over. Tomorrow, the war would begin. But tonight, I had to sit with the weight of what I was about to do. Destroy my father, expose his lies, and hope that somewhere, somehow, my mother could finally rest. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there watching the sun rise, knowing that when it set again, nothing would ever be the same. The morning of the meeting, I woke up at 4 a.m. My body felt like it was running on pure adrenaline. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, running through every possible scenario. My mother would be there, my father, my brother, the whole family, plus a few trusted outsiders my father had invited. A small, private gathering. That was the rule. No lawyers, no cameras, just family trying to figure out how to move forward. I knew that was a lie. There was no moving forward. There was only the truth, and the truth was a bomb. I dressed carefully. Black pants, a simple white blouse, flat shoes. I wanted to look serious, not flashy. Not like someone who had just inherited millions. I wanted to look like someone who had been wronged, because that's exactly what I was. The venue was my father's office, a large wood-paneled room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of room where deals were made and families were destroyed in silence. I arrived 10 minutes early. The receptionist smiled at me, but her eyes were nervous. She knew something was happening. Everyone knew something was happening. I walked into the office. My father was already there, sitting behind his massive desk. He looked older than I remembered. His face was pale, his hands resting flat on the polished wood. He didn't stand up when I entered. He just looked at me, his eyes searching for something. Guilt? Remorse? I didn't give him anything. My mother came in next. She was wearing a tailored navy dress, her hair perfectly curled. She looked like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. She sat down in the chair closest to my father, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't look at me. My brother arrived last. He walked in with his head down, his shoulders hunched. He looked like a man carrying a weight he couldn't drop. He sat across from me, and for a moment our eyes met. His were red. He had been crying. I felt a pang of something, but I pushed it down. There was no room for pity. My father cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice steady but thin. "I think we all know why we're here." I didn't say anything. I just watched him. He continued. "The will has been read, the assets have been distributed, and I understand there are questions." "Questions?" I said, my voice quiet but sharp. "That's an interesting way to put it." My mother shifted in her seat. Sarah, please, let's not start this way. Start what way, Mom? The way where I find out that my entire life has been a lie? That you and Dad have been hiding money from me for years? That you gave my brother everything while I got nothing? My father's jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like, I said, leaning forward. Explain it to me, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you chose him over me. Again. My brother spoke for the first time. His voice was barely a whisper. It wasn't my idea. I turned to him. I know it wasn't your idea, Kevin, but you didn't stop it either. You never do. He flinched. I saw the pain in his eyes, but I couldn't stop. I had been holding this in for too long. My father stood up. This is not productive, he said. We are here to find a way forward, to resolve this as a family. Resolve it? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to resolve it? Then tell me the truth, all of it. Not the version you've been feeding me for years, the real truth. The room went silent. My father looked at my mother. She looked at the floor. I could feel the tension thickening, like a fog rolling in. Then my father sat back down. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more tired. There are things I never told you, Sarah, things I thought I was protecting you from. Protecting me? I said, my voice cracking. You were protecting yourself. He didn't deny it. He just looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Your grandmother, he said slowly. She didn't just leave you the house. She left you everything, the entire estate, the investments, the trusts, everything. I felt my breath catch. What? She changed her will 6 months before she died. She didn't tell anyone, not even me. She left it all to you. My mother let out a small, choked sound. My brother stared at his hands. But the will we read, I said, my mind racing, that was different. Because I changed it, my father said. His voice was flat, empty. After she died, I found the original will. I knew what she had done, and I made a decision. The room spun. I gripped the armrests of my chair. You forged a will. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. You stole from me, I said, my voice rising. You stole my inheritance and gave it to Kevin. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. I did it for the family, he said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. No, I said, standing up. You did it for yourself. You did it because you couldn't stand the thought of me having more than you, more than him. I looked at my brother. He was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. Did you know? I asked him. He nodded, barely. And you said nothing. I was scared, he whispered. I turned to my mother. And you? She shook her head. I didn't know until after. I swear. I believed her. That was the worst part. She was just as trapped as I was. I walked to the window, my back to them. The city was waking up, people going to work, living their normal lives. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. So what happens now? I asked, not turning around. That's up to you, my father said. I'm not going to fight you. I can't. I turned to face him. You're not going to fight me? You already fought me. You fought me for years. You just didn't know I was the enemy. I walked to the door. My mother called my name. My brother stood up. I didn't stop. I need time, I said, my hand on the handle. I need to think. Sarah, please, my father said. His voice broke. Don't destroy this family. I looked at him, at the man who had taken everything from me, the man who had chosen his own pride over his daughter. You already did that, I said. I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. The hallway was empty. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. I had the truth. I had the power, but I didn't know what to do with it. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I opened it. I have the original will. Meet me tonight, alone. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. Someone else knew. Someone was watching. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The hotel room felt like a cage. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in my hands. The voicemail from my lawyer was still fresh in my mind. The police found the storage unit. They're cross-referencing the serial numbers now. It's a match, Mia, all of it. I should have felt relief. Instead, my stomach churned. Every piece of evidence I had collected over the years, the fake invoices, the doctored receipts, the hidden accounts, was now in official hands. There was no turning back. My mother was going to be arrested. My father would finally see the truth. And my brother, Eric, would have to face the consequences of his silence. I paced the room, my bare feet pressing into the cold carpet. The clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, my mother's calm, composed expression as she sat in that courtroom, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was the enemy. And maybe I was. I grabbed my phone and dialed my father's number. It rang 4 times before he answered, his voice groggy and confused. "Mia, do you know what time it is?" "I know, Dad. I'm sorry, but I need you to listen." There was a pause. I heard him shift in bed, the creak of the mattress. "What's going on?" I took a breath. "The police have everything. The storage unit, the documents, the recordings. It's all there. They're going to arrest her." Silence. Then quietly, "Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He didn't speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice cracked. "I don't know how we got here, Mia. I don't know how I missed it." "You trusted her," I said. "We all did." "But you didn't," he whispered. "You saw it." I closed my eyes. I had to. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened rain. I parked across the street and sat in my car, watching the building. People filed in and out, lawyers, clerks, families caught in their own dramas. I wondered how many of them were about to have their worlds turned upside down. My phone buzzed. It was Eric. "Don't come," he said, his voice tight. "Just stay away." "I'm already here." "Mia, please. Mom is losing it. She's been crying all night. Dad is barely speaking. This is destroying us." "It was already destroyed," I said. "I'm just showing everyone the truth." He let out a bitter laugh. "The truth? You think the truth fixes anything? You think people are going to thank you for this?" "I don't want thanks. I want justice." "Justice," he repeated, the word dripping with scorn. "You want revenge. There's a difference." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because maybe he was right. Maybe somewhere along the way, the line had blurred. But I had spent years watching my mother play the victim while she built her empire on lies. I had watched her manipulate my father, control my brother, and turn every family gathering into a stage for her performance. And I had watched them all applaud. I got out of the car and walked toward the courthouse. The rain started as I reached the steps, a light drizzle that quickly turned into a downpour. I didn't run. I let the water soak through my jacket, my hair plastering to my face. It felt like a baptism. Inside, the air was cold and sterile. I found the courtroom and took a seat in the back. My father was already there, sitting alone on the left side. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders hunched, his hands gripping the bench in front of him. He didn't turn around. A few minutes later, the side door opened. My mother walked in, escorted by a bailiff. She was wearing a simple gray dress, no jewelry, no makeup. Her hair was pulled back. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. She scanned the room until her eyes found mine. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe, or anger. But then it was gone, replaced by that familiar mask of calm dignity. The judge entered. We all stood. The proceedings began. I don't remember every word that was said. I remember the prosecutor reading the charges: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. I remember my mother's lawyer arguing for bail, listing her community service, her charitable work, her role as a devoted mother and wife. I remember the judge's face, impassive and unreadable. And I remember the moment the prosecutor called me to the stand. I walked up the aisle, past my father, past the empty seats, past the eyes of strangers who had come to watch the drama unfold. I took the oath. I sat down, and I told the truth. I told them about the first time I found a discrepancy in the books. I told them about the hidden accounts, the fake charities, the money funneled through shell companies. I told them about the recordings I had made, the documents I had copied, the years of careful, painstaking work. My mother stared at me the entire time. Her eyes never left my face. And when I finished, when the prosecutor sat down and her lawyer declined to cross-examine, she finally spoke. "You were always my favorite," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The judge banged his gavel. "The witness is dismissed." I stepped down. I walked back to my seat, and I didn't look at her again. The hearing ended with a date set for trial. My mother was released on bail, her passport confiscated. As she left the courtroom, she paused beside my father. She leaned down and said something I couldn't hear. He didn't respond. I waited until the room was almost empty before I stood up. My legs felt weak. My hands were shaking. I had done what I set out to do, but instead of triumph, I felt hollow. My father approached me. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. Then he pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it." I held him tight. "It's okay, Dad." But it wasn't, and we both knew it. I walked out of the courthouse into the rain. The street was empty. The world felt quiet, as if it were holding its breath. I stood there, letting the water wash over me, and I wondered what came next. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "You think this is over? It's not." I stared at the screen. My heart pounded. The rain kept falling. The gavel falls and the sound echoes through the courtroom like a gunshot. I feel it in my bones, a vibration that travels up my spine and settles in my chest. Judge Patricia Warren, a woman with silver hair and eyes that have seen every kind of lie, looks at me with something that almost resembles respect. "Case dismissed with prejudice," she says. "The court finds no legal basis for the plaintiff's claims. The defendant is fully and rightfully the sole owner of the property at 8476 Elderberry Lane." Ethan's face goes white, not pale, white, like someone drained all the blood from his skin in a single second. He's still sitting at the plaintiff's table, his hands flat on the wood, fingers splayed. He looks like a man who just watched his own house collapse. Mom is crying, not the fake theatrical tears she used at the deposition. Real tears, ugly, snotty, broken sobs that she can't control. She's gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white, her whole body shaking. "No," she whispers. "No, no, no." Ashley is frozen. She's staring at me, but she's not seeing me. She's seeing the future she thought she had, the house, the money, the easy life, and it's dissolving in front of her eyes. I don't feel triumphant. I feel hollow, empty, like someone carved out all the anger and left nothing but a cold, quiet space. "The court will now hear the counterclaim," Judge Warren says. "This is the moment I've been waiting for, the moment I planned for months, the hidden advantage that no one saw coming." My lawyer, Sarah Chen, stands up. She's a small woman with a sharp bob and sharper eyes. She's been quiet for most of the trial, letting me speak, letting the evidence speak. But now she's ready. "Your Honor," Sarah says, "the defendant, Diana Hartwell, has a counterclaim against the plaintiffs for fraudulent misrepresentation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and abuse of process." Mom's head snaps up. "What?" Ethan turns to his lawyer, a man named Gerald who looks like he just swallowed a lemon. "What is she talking about?" Sarah walks to the evidence table. She picks up a folder, a thick folder, the one I gave her 3 months ago, filled with everything I found. "The defendant has evidence that the plaintiffs knowingly filed a false claim of ownership," Sarah says. "They fabricated documents, manipulated timelines, and attempted to defraud the court. This was not a case of mistaken belief. This was a calculated attempt to steal property worth over $2 million. "Objection," Gerald says, but his voice is weak. He knows what's coming. Overruled, Judge Warren says. Continue. Sarah opens the folder. We have bank records showing that Ethan Hartwell received a payment of $50,000 from a shell company 3 weeks before filing this lawsuit. That shell company is linked to a real estate developer who has been trying to acquire the Elderberry Lane property for years. Ethan stands up. That's not true. That's a lie. Sit down, mister. Hartwell, Judge Warren says. I watch him. I watch the man I once called brother, and I see the mask slip. The charming, friendly, harmless Ethan is gone. Underneath is someone desperate, someone who thought he could take everything from me and walk away clean. Furthermore, Sarah continues, we have evidence that the plaintiff's mother, Linda Hartwell, was aware that the property was left solely to Diana. She admitted this in a private conversation with a neighbor, which was recorded. Mom's face goes red, then purple. She looks like she's about to explode. That's illegal, she screams. You can't record someone without their consent. In this state, Judge Warren says calmly, one-party consent is legal. If the neighbor was part of the conversation, the recording is admissible. Mom falls back into her chair. She looks at me, and for the first time, I see fear in her eyes. Real fear, not anger, not manipulation. Fear. Deanna, she says, her voice cracking, please, we're family. Family. The word feels like a knife twisting in my gut. You stopped being my family the day you tried to take my home, I say. My voice is steady, calmer than I expected. You stopped being my family when you lied to the court, when you made me feel crazy for trusting you. I'm your mother, she says. No, I say. You're the woman who gave birth to me. That's not the same thing. Sarah places another document on the table. Your Honor, we have a sworn affidavit from the real estate developer's former assistant. She confirms that Ethan Hartwell approached them with a proposal. He offered to clear the property of any legal obstacles, including removing the rightful owner, in exchange for a percentage of the sale. The courtroom goes silent. Even the court reporter stops typing. Ethan looks around, searching for an exit, for a way out, but there's nowhere to go. This is insane, he says. She's making this up. She's always been jealous. She's always been the bitter one. I look at him, really look at him, and I see the boy who used to steal my toys and blame me, the teenager who took credit for my work in school, the man who tried to take everything I had. I'm not bitter, Ethan, I say. I'm just done. Judge Warren looks at the evidence for a long time. She flips through the pages. She reads the affidavit. She looks at the bank records. Then she looks up. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of possible perjury and fraud, she says. This court will issue a restraining order against the plaintiffs, prohibiting them from contacting the defendant or approaching the property. The counterclaim will proceed to trial on a separate date. Mom screams, a raw animal sound that fills the room. You can't do this, you can't. Ashley is crying now, not pretty crying, ugly crying. Her mascara is running down her face. She looks at me and her eyes are full of hate. You ruined us, she says. No, I say. You ruined yourselves. I just showed everyone the truth. The bailiff steps forward. The court will now clear the room. I stand up. My legs feel weak, but I force them to hold me. I walk toward the door and I don't look back. I don't need to see their faces anymore. I've seen enough. Outside the courthouse, the sun is bright. Too bright. I squint and put on my sunglasses. Sarah walks beside me. You did good, she says. I did what I had to do, I say. What now? I think about the house, the empty rooms, the garden that needs weeding, the life I have to rebuild. I go home, I say. I go home and I figure out who I am without them. Sarah nods. She pats my shoulder and walks away. I stand alone on the courthouse steps. The wind blows my hair across my face. I feel the weight of the last year lifting, but it leaves something else behind. Something cold, something quiet. I won, but winning feels a lot like losing. I walk down the steps. My car is parked across the street. I unlock it with the remote and hear the familiar click. Then I hear footsteps behind me. Diana. I turn around. It's Ethan. He looks broken. His tie is loose. His eyes are red. "Please," he says, "just give me one more chance. We can fix this. We're family." I look at him. "The man who tried to destroy me." "No," I say, "we're not." I get in my car. I close the door. I drive away, and I don't look back. The courtroom was silent. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of a held breath, a collective pause before the final blow. I stood at the plaintiff's table, my hands resting flat on the cool wood. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was just still. I had nothing left to prove to myself. This was for the record. The judge nodded at me. "You may proceed, Ms. Vance." I turned to face my family. My mother sat in the front row, her face a mask of cold fury. She still didn't believe I would do it. She thought I was bluffing. My father was beside her, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere above my head. And my brother, Mark, was at the end of the row, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. He wouldn't look at me. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to submit the final piece of evidence in this case. Approach the bench." I walked forward, holding a single sheet of paper. It was the document I had kept hidden for 2 years, the one that proved everything. I handed it to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. She read it, her expression unchanged. Then she looked up. "This is a signed affidavit from the estate attorney who handled the original trust documents. It states that the family trust was amended 3 months before my grandmother's death. The amendment removed me as a beneficiary and added my brother's name in my place." A murmur rippled through the gallery. My mother's face went pale. "The signature on the amendment," I continued, "is a forgery. I have a handwriting analysis report from 3 independent experts. They all confirm the signature was not my grandmother's." I turned and looked directly at my mother. "You forged her signature. You and Mark. You planned this before she died." My mother stood up. "That's a lie." "Sit down," the judge said, her voice sharp. My mother hesitated, then sank back into her seat. Her hands were shaking. Mark was staring at the floor. He knew. He had always known. "I have one more thing," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small voice recorder. "This is a conversation I recorded 2 years ago. It's between my brother and me. He admits everything." I pressed play. Mark's voice filled the room, tinny but clear. "Mom said we had to do it. She said you were too emotional, that you'd just waste the money. She said it was for the family." The recording played for another 30 seconds. By the end, my mother was crying. Not tears of remorse, tears of rage. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Vance, what is your desired resolution?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment, the one I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. But now that it was here, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. "Your Honor, I'm not asking for the money. I'm asking for the truth. I want the court to declare the amendment invalid. I want the original trust restored, and I want a public record of what happened." My mother let out a sharp laugh. "You're not taking the money? Then what was all this for?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had raised me, who had taught me to be strong, who had then tried to destroy me. "Because I don't need your money, Mom. I never did. I needed you to see me. I needed you to admit that I mattered. But you couldn't. So now everyone will know." The judge adjourned the hearing for a final ruling. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a hand on my arm. It was Mark. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I looked at him. His eyes were red. He looked broken. "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't fix it." I walked away, out of the courthouse, into the cold air. The sky was gray, but there was a sliver of light on the horizon. I got into my car and sat there for a long time. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You won, but you lost your family. Was it worth it?" I stared at the screen. Then I typed a reply. I didn't lose my family. I never had one. And yes, it was worth it. I put the phone down and started the engine. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back.